Hello! No matter how you prepare for a trip to the mountains and study the weather report, there is a phenomenon that cannot always be predicted. Rockfalls that are frightening in their scale. Today we will see how giant pieces of rock destroy everything in their path. Go! It is unknown what these workers in the mountains of India are thinking about. But they were extremely lucky. A tiny minicar or a hefty bus, it doesn't matter. Almost everything is vulnerable to the forces of nature. Well, at least the driver passengers managed to get their bearings in time, and the consequences were avoided. What does it look like? This is tobacco. These two are officially the luckiest people of the year. Now you will understand why. The nervous system of this guy who just lay down to rest during a rockfall definitely deserves a like. Basically, staying in one place increases your chances of survival, so he's clearly very knowledgeable about mountain safety. Perhaps the most frightening thing about landslides is that they can be completely unpredictable. It would seem that what is wrong with this rock? Sometimes landslides are so strong that they can change the landscape of an entire area. For example, in these frames you see the collapse of a rock with a volume of 210 cubic meters in Switzerland. We bet geologists will have to draw new maps after this. And this is the city of Bayamon, Puerto Rico. Unsuccessful work, coupled with rain, caused one of the largest landslides in the city's history. The situation was complicated by the presence of residential areas at the foot of the mountain, but the authorities evacuated as many as 23 families from the most dangerous zone in time. Remember, one of the main skills useful for survival in southern countries is the ability to run fast. proof that such fences in mountainous areas are not just for show. The last thing you want to see in your camp at an altitude of 4,000 meters is a huge avalanche approaching it. Go, let's go, Paul. What are we doing? It's just a miracle that no one was hurt. Despite all the bewitching beauty of Alaskan nature, it is definitely full of character. In this video, the splitting of a huge glacier has become a real problem for tourists passing by. Check it out, a phenomenon no less frightening in its scale, the so-called sandfall, was caught on camera in Saudi Arabia. California is one of the most seismically active areas in the United States. It is not surprising that the rock in this area is very unstable. But even with the frequency of earthquakes in the state, geologists called this the largest landslide in the Lojowie area of San Diego in the last 40 years. A mudflow can occur so suddenly that even meteorological and geodetic services cannot predict its occurrence, nor its destructive consequences. Watch now what watch. Easily demolished the metal bridge in front of dozens of people. Incredible! Here is an excellent reason for you to take such signs much more seriously. Sombreros, cacti and tequila are the first things that Mexico is associated with. However, we should not forget that Rockfalls did not spare its mountainous terrain. This landslide in Veracruz County damaged a road, leaving 6 populated areas without any communication with the outside world. Crazy power. Heavy rainfall in northern India generally makes the terrain extremely dangerous. After all, the Himalayas are located there. I'm a complete idiot. Not only thanks to the reaction and experience of the drivers, victims were avoided, but it is at such moments that you realize how powerful nature is. Are you unhappy with the quality of roads in your city? Look what nature does to them in Brazil. Now the county will have to pay a huge amount, and the road will definitely be closed for several months. It would seem, what does this have to do with the reservoir that overflowed its banks and the topic about Rockfalls? It's simple. Yes, controlled explosions in the mountains can even lead to such consequences. We must admit that, despite the complexity, this guy has one of the coolest jobs in the world. To be continued. This is called a controlled release. To prevent such a colossus from suddenly falling onto the road, experts push it down in advance without risk to others. To be continued. Nature, of course, has nothing to do with it, and this time both the driver and the driver were very lucky. But what will happen if such a block does collapse on the car? These tests were carried out in order to find out what would happen to a car if a stone weighing more than 6 tons fell on it from a height of 30 meters. Impressive, right? Big rock at the top. There are mountain routes that are not at all suitable for inexperienced tourists. And here is a striking example from the north of India. Heavy rains washed away the rock and caused rocks to fall right onto the highway. Fortunately, no one was injured during the collapse, but the path from the neighboring village was blocked. As a result, about 40 tourists were forced to stay and wait for evacuation. However, even on tourist routes and even with a guide, you must always remain vigilant. For example, the authors of this video were descending from the top of Mont Blanc and witnessed a massive rockfall. Oh my God! If you suddenly thought that traveling through the Alps in Italy is a relaxing and serene activity, The echo of this rockfall in Switzerland was heard throughout the valley, and no wonder. There are 2,000 cubic meters of rock here. Such power can easily destroy trees or even houses that are in its path. The good news is that geologists discovered this dangerous area several years ago, and were monitoring the rock. This allowed the villagers to be evacuated from their homes at the foot of the mountain in time. It was extremely restless in the coastal town of Palos Verdes Estates, California that day. The landslide was so powerful that the rocks, debris and dirt that came down from the cliff crushed the car. Fortunately, and to everyone's surprise, there were no casualties. So that you don't get scared that rocks sometimes smash off cliffs like a fountain, we'll explain. This rockfall was caused artificially. Directed explosions are carried out before an accident can happen. As a result, for example, 3,500 cubic meters of rock came down from the cliff. And half an hour later the road was reopened. Subtitles by D. Matorzak. Oh my god. Oh my god. As you can see, such collapses can often hit high-voltage wires, knocking out power to local residents' homes for several days. I bet you've never seen a game of bowling like this before. Avalanches are certainly a scary phenomenon, but sometimes they are also incredibly beautiful. This piece of ice looks like a huge gem. Easy, easy, easy.